Welcome, Mota, to the Wholesome Crypto Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be on your show.
Yeah, of course. And you've been doing a lot contributing to the ETH community with EthDaily. It's a newsletter and podcast giving, I get my news source from there, so I appreciate your work. And I definitely want to learn more about the process of what you do and how you got there. So one thing I do want to learn about, though, is what were you doing before ever even hearing about cryptocurrencies? Where was Mota at in life?
Yeah, so before I ever heard about Bitcoin or blockchain or Ethereum, I was in undergrad doing undergraduate studies. I was working a marketing role, a traditional marketing role at a government-funded nonprofit. And when I say traditional marketing, I mean like some of the marketing campaigns were like print marketing. And when I first heard about Bitcoin, I was taking an accounting course and learning about bank reconciliation. So that's basically when a company checks their books against their bank statements. And I was thinking to myself, well, blockchain kind of fixes this if the companies just keep their financials on chain. And so that kind of really clicked with me at the time. And so that was when I first started to go down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, blockchain, and the broader crypto ecosystem.
Did your professor mention about Bitcoin, or was that just like you heard it from somewhere else and it kind of connected the dots?
I think it was kind of popping up in 2017. So there's a few people talking about it. And then I've also heard at the time about the Silk Road site and how it used Bitcoin. So a couple of friends were talking about it. So I decided to look a little more into it. And so I guess kind of with these cycles, when crypto gets popular, people kind of start asking about it.
Yeah, that's like the fun part about it all is like when your friends are just like talking about it, getting all jazzed up and saying, "Oh, look, I made $10 today," or I mean, like you're just like bragging about how much money they made in crypto, and during that time, that's what it was like known for mostly. It's still known for that today, but it's changing dramatically with all the new applications you can build, dApps, DeFi, NFTs, etc. And there's a lot more news going around. So it's definitely hard to filter all that out. But yeah, so you were learning about Bitcoin. You kind of heard about it. Things are starting to click for you. But was it something that you knew you wanted to heavily invest your time and energy into? Or was it just something kind of like, oh, it's neat?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in podcasting as a medium. It's definitely a unique medium of storytelling, and I've always been interested in audio. So human voice and audio are super powerful. When you watch a movie, you get the emotions from the audio.
Mm-hmm.
So watching a movie without audio would be like unbearable.
Yeah, especially scary movies. They just wouldn't be scary anymore.
Yeah, definitely. So I've had podcasts before, but just kind of testing it out and how to do a podcast, how it works. So I kind of saw an opportunity to get into podcasting within crypto and also use it as a way to learn about crypto myself. So with podcasting, and I'm sure if there's other podcast hosts listening to this, it's definitely a tool for the host to learn different perspectives, learn different technologies, just gain so much insight from the people that you interview. And so at the time Bitcoin was going through its hard fork with Bitcoin Cash, and I was like thinking to myself, why is everyone so angry? What's going on here? And so, as we know today, Bitcoin Cash was, it flopped. And so that kind of caught my interest that people were so passionate. This was back when there was actually Bitcoin developers that were debating about upgrades to the network. And so I started a daily podcast at the time to get myself into crypto. And this
Uh,
was more broadly of a more broad podcast covering the entire crypto ecosystem as a whole, as opposed to EthDaily now. I've kind of narrowed down my focus to the Ethereum ecosystem. But even within the Ethereum ecosystem, there's so much going on
mhm.
that if you're just coming into the space, you can even pick a subset of a technology. It could be the layer two ecosystems, it could be app chains. Um, there's just so much to go into that you can start a content channel about almost any topic.
Yeah. And so, how was that experience for you doing the broad crypto podcast? And uh, I guess what was your transitioning point into focusing on ETH?
Yeah, so that was I kind of got lucky with the timing with the previous cycle in 2017 with that podcast. I continued it on to until 2018, where I worked for an Ethereum-based project in a marketing role. But I've always liked using podcasting as a part of the marketing strategy.
Hmm.
But it was there where I kind of, when it was more so of a bear market, and you really see kind of like the projects that flop and that
Yeah.
go away. Like 99% of the projects from 2017 are not to be found today.
Yep.
Um, in 2018, like EOS had that $4 billion ICO, which
Yeah.
was absolutely like insane. But during the bear, you saw like the true colors of the projects in the space and kind of the technologies leading forward. And so I kind of followed Ethereum closely and with its path towards, at the time it was towards ETH 2.0, but over time that changed into the merge, as we know,
Yep.
which happened in September.
Yep. And yeah, it's a good time to get into it because there was so much hype around it, and it was pretty insane, like watching it happen. So there was a lot of worry. People,
And
like, go ahead.
yeah, and we saw that with this cycle also, like crypto Twitter compared to this time last year. It's just so much more clean.
Yeah, and I'm always like surprised. We have alternatives to crypto Twitter, like just Twitter in general, and people just don't. We don't move for some reason. We have alternatives, good alternatives that work, and if it's a crypto Twitter, we can always use something like GM.xyz or like now Mastodon, and I think Lens is still working their way up, but I mean,
Yeah,
I'm like rooting for the crypto scene to finally make the push altogether, but it's dependent on us. And once we make the move, we'll see.
yeah. Web3 social, for some reason, we that's been an aspect that the crypto ecosystem hasn't been able to get right. Like in 2017, 2018, there was a platform called Steemit, which is
Yeah,
kind of similar. But yeah, no, like none of them have really taken off. Everyone's still on Web2 Twitter.
yeah, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's seemingly getting cleaner from all the
Yeah,
ads.
yeah. The user experience of even newer platforms today, like Lens Protocol, is definitely a better experience than some of the early social applications.
Mhm. And so now, all right, you're in the scene. ETH Daily is starting up. What were your goals? Were your like learning experiences from the previous podcast that was generally crypto? And what did you bring with you? And what kind of things did you change that you knew that you can make better from your learnings?
Yeah, definitely. So in 2021, kind of that second cycle brought me back into focus more on day to day on what's going on in the space. I knew I wanted to focus on Ethereum just because that's where majority of the developer activity, majority of the applications are.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest change is obviously with EthDaily, it's focused on ETH. Previously, it'd just be more general headlines of the day. And also the news sources that I go towards now, which majority is from crypto Twitter. I try to go directly to the source, so just following companies themselves, and whenever they publish an update, whenever someone like Liquidity or DeFi Saver release a new feature, new product, I follow them closely, so I see what they release and kind of get my sources from the projects directly, as opposed to previously just what was being reported on.
Gotcha.
So definitely focusing on increasing the quality of content that is covered. Also, developments from the Ethereum core development team. They have about right now 2 or 3 weekly calls, from the consensus layer call to the execution layer call, the proto dank sharding call. And they always have, if you ever want to learn about Ethereum, attend one of these calls and you'll be mind blown by all the different updates that are happening. So yeah, just the quality of updates that I provide, I try to increase that quality. And also, I've always liked doing a daily briefing. That's kind of been fun for me, and also a great way to just catch up myself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just a more filtered out, better daily briefing than the previous one.
And so this sounds like it's mostly manual. Like, how much tech do you use to at least automate some of your processes?
Yeah, so thankfully, there's been tools that have come out in the podcasting space to automate, the podcast production process. So for news, I have my list of projects and sources that I track. Also, the alpha here is DeFi Llama is actually uh, very good at doing their daily roundups. So if you want a faster source, they cover almost everything. But go to the DeFi Llama daily roundup, and they'll provide kind of like a list of what's going on. And then go on crypto Twitter. Maybe I'll create some lists of people to follow, and for
Mm-hmm.
specific ecosystems, like the layer 2 ecosystem. Um, and yeah, so for tools for automation, right now I've recently transitioned into using Descript, which
Yeah.
is a podcast production or editing application, and they've really pushed the needle forward with podcast editing. So it handles audio, video, audiograms, um, uh, and it makes it super easy to just make a few light edits and export the final audio and video product out to publish on socials.
Yep. Yeah, I've toyed around with Descript for a bit on my own, but now checking out dub.media. I also recommend you to check that out. It might be useful, but what they do is kind of take your podcast, take your audio recording or video, and kind of create a blog posts and a transcript and all that fun stuff using AI to kind of create your text shareables instead of you having to create your own. It saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and definitely with there's a few other tools like Audio Bursts where they just clips an audio clip from your podcast to share on social.
Mm-hmm.
So these tools are like great, but they're not quite there yet with the
Yeah.
terms of like capturing the right moment or making the right post. So it does take a little bit of manual editing to posting on social.
Mm-hmm.
But for the editing flow, like things like background noise reduction, noise gate, these things that you would have to do manually in a digital audio workstation, um, these are just implemented tools into these new softwares like Descript, where it's just a simple button to remove background noise. Um, And let me see
Yeah.
if there's other tools. Well, Descript, what I've been testing out with Descript is their uh, overdub AI feature, which
Oh
allows you
yeah.
to create an AI of your own voice. Um, so it's mainly used for, the main use case for it is editing. So in case I slip up a word or say the wrong thing, you can uh, use that tool to automate the correct audio version of what you said. But I've been trying to get it to a point where I can hopefully just have that be my voice. So I just send a script to Descript, have it produce the audio recording instead of having to record manually.
Yep.
Not there yet. Just need probably several more hours of data to feed it, but I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, I think I've listened to a few of your episodes, and I can tell it's like, oh, this is Descript. I think I was checking that out, and I was impressed though. It sounded really nice. It was really clean. Um, and I'm comparing it to your voice now, and I can, yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah, and I saw the other day someone posted on Twitter that they created an automated podcast by using Chat uh,
Cheap.
GPT, um, and they basically created a script to summarize like a white paper and used Chat GPT to generate a conversation between two individuals, and then use a text to speech tool to generate the audio, and published it as a podcast. So we're not quite there to the final product yet, but we're definitely seeing the innovation in AI to help us automate the production process of basically breaking down or summarizing more complex topics into simpler ones to help us learn, which is what I see uh, podcasting is mainly used for.
Absolutely. And yeah, like as I'm as I'm doing my own podcast, I'm like, this is a lot of time for free. But is this your full time like job gig? Is this something you do on the side?
Yeah, so apart from EthDaily, I do podcast services. So I privately do podcast services for both individuals and companies, whether it's looking to launch a podcast or looking to for that editing service or even hosting. I do provide services on a per project basis to other either individuals or companies. But yeah, as a solo podcaster, it can be quite draining to do the entire production flow.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you want to focus on is you want to make more time towards what you're covering in your podcast. And so I'm improving that for myself. So it takes up less time to produce these daily briefings, and eventually hope to automate that process.
Yep.
But on the side, I privately help others with their podcasts.
Wow. How many hours do you think you spend a day on just ETH daily?
Yeah, so it can range. Sometimes it could be as short as 3 hours. Other times it can be, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends if there's uh, enough coverage, enough items to cover, and also like sometimes with these daily, I like pushing myself to write. So it with each podcast you kind of improve yourself, and with each daily it's basically a text briefing that I turn into an audio briefing. But it's for myself, it's improving writing skills and also learning about these different projects. So if there's a more technical um, uh, item that I need to cover that I haven't learned about yet, then it takes me a little bit more time to kind of understand what that update is. um, like right now, there's Frax, the stablecoin, released a liquid staking derivative, but it, part of that yield from their liquid staking derivative comes from incentives on Curve. So these things kind of take a little bit more time for me to read through myself and summarize them to put in the daily briefing. So it varies between 3 to 5 hours daily.
Gotcha. That's a good amount of time. So then, like, what do you do? I guess like you're doing EthDaily, you're doing private podcast services. Like, how does Mota spend his time offline? What do you do for like as like a hobby or something to kind of just clear your mind from the podcast space and crypto space?
Sure. So like for in terms of like hobbies and for fun on free time, I like learning about audio. So like now there's like 32-bit float audio, which is clipless audio. So I kind of like diving into new tools within audio and also trying to keep up to date with what's going on in the podcast space.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I spend my time. And also, I've also been in my free time kind of diving into DMX lighting and creating light shows. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, that's still focused around like audio tech.
Have you ever thought of going into audio engineering?
Not necessarily, just because I kind of uh, like software has improved so much
Yeah.
for every industry, and so some of the things that used to take so much time or required so much special expertise, now it's just like with software, it improves it and it makes that tool available for the masses. So an example is like a noise gate on an audio file. Like before, there used to be an analog device, hardware device that you can put your noise gate on. But now there's just several audio softwares that you can add a noise gate, and there's like a transition from analog to digital, and everything's digital now. So I don't really. It's more of nostalgia of going back to the analog tech just to have
Mhm.
fun with it. But my sort of focus and passion is still within podcasting, creating storytelling, helping companies get their message out, and using this as a medium to reach others.
Good. Yeah, it's awesome. Like, it's nice that you found your passion and you're able to live it and work in it and grow your own entrepreneurial journey from it. It's like a life goal for many people and myself.
Yeah,
Um,
I definitely would have never thought that you could, like when I was doing an undergrad, that you could make a living from podcasting. In terms of podcasts that self-sustained just based off the podcast alone, it is a small percentage, like maybe 1 to 2% of podcasts monetize enough to self-sustain. But it's definitely still early with podcasting, even though it's grown tremendously over the past couple of years. Um, so it's not too late to get into podcasting and to get into making this your daily routine or your career. So there's definitely lots of room for growth.
yeah, and definitely we know we're trying. um, so as you're getting all this news from the Ethereum, you know, ecosystem, and you've been in the crypto space for quite a while now, so you got a good understanding of how it all works. What is a crypto pet peeve that you have?
Sure. I think these past few months we've seen, or actually, it's always been here. So, like grifting
Yeah.
on Twitter. I think the grifters have always been here. I haven't heard the term grifting until this past cycle. I didn't hear that term thrown around in 2017. But like, I now understand for a new person coming into the space, um, seeing a tweet from a grifter versus someone else, it's kind of hard to tell with if someone's grifting, like if they
Mhm.
actually know what they're talking about, or sometimes it's the grifters like they just don't know what they're talking about, and they're not intentionally misleading. But other times, people just use a narrative to intentionally mislead and drive a narrative. So yeah, that would be a pet peeve of mine. Um, if you're coming into this space, I think long term, if you have integrity, it'll pay off long term because everyone remembers the grifters
Yeah,
from like the past cycle, and that kind of sticks with you. So you kind of want to keep a clean slate and just be honest and have integrity and not creating unnecessary, misleading narratives.
exactly. That's interesting since you deal with news so much. Has there ever been like something, if you could remember, like an article or some update that came out and you were just surprised it wasn't bigger, either if it was like something really amazing and good or something really negative and damaging?
Surprising that not enough people talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure. I think late last year with FTX, that kind of took over the news, and so people really miss the underlying uh, products that these companies release. So like DeFi Saver, for example, I'm not affiliated with them, or I'm not paid by them, but they released quite a few updates and that I thought were really cool for their portal. And so if you just pay attention to what's going on in the mainstream of FTX, Celsius, what's the most recent one, Gemini,
Yeah.
it's kind of news that just keeps you busy. But if you try to focus on new products and new primitives, new releases that are coming out, you get to learn more about how DeFi works and how these financial products work, and you deepen your knowledge and can use it as a tool for your own financial uses.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because where you get your news and getting like the news that isn't just trying to like convince you of something, more just tell you what's going on and you make your own decision, is really important. And you know, working on this and growing this for your friends and family, when they see you working on this, are they thinking, man, Moto, stop, like crypto is nuts, like why are you wasting your time with this, you should be focusing on something else? Or are they totally supportive and excited for you to grow this podcast?
Definitely supportive, and I think because from the past cycle, I've kind of uh, helped them uh, on board and kind of just stick to the stuff that works, not dive into uh, platforms that don't work, and just keep it simple, stupid, right? Just use for most people that are not in crypto, and you maybe you work in healthcare, you work in a completely different industry, but you still want some exposure. It's okay to invest in crypto. My advice would just be keep it self custody, keep it secure, just keep it there. Since they don't really have time to get into the specifics of how to use different applications, and it gets risky for someone that doesn't know, a malicious MetaMask transaction versus a non-malicious one. My advice is just to keep it simple. Just it's kind of that narrative from the Bitcoin community, right? Like they don't do anything with their Bitcoin; they just hold it. But that kind of has worked for them in a way. So that's kind of my advice for people that are not in this space and don't have time for it.
Absolutely.
But self custody is the key. That's like the whole purpose of crypto.
Absolutely. And it's like, it is a step-by-step process. Every time someone comes to me asking, how do I start getting into crypto? I'm like, well, there's a lot to tell you, but I guess first thing you should do is open up, I guess, a more trusted centralized exchange such as Coinbase. Like I want to say Binance and Gemini, but I don't know if I can they're kind of on the borderline right now. Kraken's okay, but yeah, I'm not paid by any of these guys either. This is all the options we have here.
And that's the hard part, right? Like, how do you recommend something that is easy enough for the average person, but kind of like at what risk are you suggesting that for? So it can get tricky, especially in 2021 with the CeFi platforms, BlockFi, Celsius. Obviously, everyone's interested, and it's kind of easy to recommend, like, oh, here's this platform; it'll take care of everything for you. But it's kind of it can be hard to uh, stop yourself from recommending a platform just because it's easy to use. So yeah, I also say, like, oh, just use Coinbase, but you want to go self custody.
Exactly. I'm like, use an exchange that lets you withdraw your crypto as soon as possible, and then withdraw it out of there. So
exactly.
But some people don't even like doing that. People just like buying and holding in their exchange because it is an extra layer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a hard it's like it's easy to sell, but also pretty hard to sell at the same time. But yeah, but as long as they're getting into it somehow and hopefully not losing all their money, then
that's probably why these CeFi platforms had such a massive value proposition, just because, there's Ethereum staking, but people don't know how to go about that. And it's pretty technical for a non-technical person to go through that process of setting up a home validator. And so that's kind of why these CeFi platforms filled that need for people. But there's kind of no way to go around having to rely on a centralized third party to take care of something for you. There's only self-custody. That's the safest way.
Absolutely. And like anyone who's interested in staking Ethereum, try not to stake it on a centralized exchange. Like go to Rocket Pool, go to Stakewise, go to Superfizz. He's like the man of all staking. They have great help and tutorials and examples of how to stake at home, or at least stake somewhere else that's more decentralized. Healthy for the community. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like there is a tipping point. And I think like it's nice that we are getting closer to it compared to 2017, 2013. It's like I'm seeing the growth. I'm seeing the ease of use. Like nowadays, people don't have to download the entire blockchain on their computers to make a transaction, which is amazing in itself.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like even with staking, that's getting easier. So like, previously with mining, you need specialized equipment, and that was a pretty difficult task to do. But staking has gotten easier, and I just think it's going to get, as Ethereum progresses and there's even more upgrades, I think it'll get even easier to host a home validator, a home node. And I think, if you're out there, the Rocket Pool community, the Superfizz with the staked Ethereum community, there's guides, but I think there's going to be even more guides and simpler ways to stake as the network progresses.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's definitely something on my to-do list to get that set up for home network, but yeah, in time. So yeah, and then as you're learning more about the ETH community, do you feel like you've let go of your Bitcoin interest and other cryptocurrency interests? Are you like an ETH fanatic, or you still love everything in general?
So am I ETH maxi? In other terms, I would say definitely. I don't see anything wrong with Bitcoin as an asset. I think it's there. It was the first. It was the coin that brought this entire ecosystem in the beginning. I'm not, but yeah, I'm definitely, in terms of what I spend my time in value in. is strictly Ethereum. Um, I, I guess that's one of my weaknesses is not diving into the other ecosystems
Hmm.
like Solana, Cosmos, Polkadot. Not because I believe that they're gonna gain market share or market dominance over Ethereum, but just because it's a great way to understand what they're doing, and if it doesn't work, like why didn't it work? So like, what coins are just or what chains are just a copy of other chains, and kind of being able to tell that difference. Um, that's something I need to spend more time on is understanding other ecosystems just to be open to understanding them. But I would say I'm mostly ETH maxi, but still open to other ecosystems.
Yeah, I feel you on that one because I mean, I still like Bitcoin as an asset. The fundamental belief in it is so interesting. It's just kind of pure, very libertarian. But I kind of understand the fascination behind it and interest in it, and I really don't think it's going to go anywhere. Um, I still wonder if ETH will ever flip it, but I still think they're going to grow in line together. And to mention other blockchains, it's tough because we have such robust systems, or you know things have been out for a while, like Ethereum and Bitcoin. They've been tossed in the ringer for a bit, and they've had their fair share of downfalls in the earliest stages. But then when you see new blockchains coming up now, and then they have their issues where the chain stops or something has to be reset, or if there's any issues, people are, I feel like, are less forgiving and definitely more harsh in terms of judgment. Like, all right, this chain can't do anything. Solana went down 3 times. Like, yeah, maybe it's not going to be the one, or maybe we should wait and see. Like, give them a chance. I don't know what's best. It's kind of hard to say, but it's definitely like we definitely see a lot of the human aspect in the crypto industry of like judgment, talking about which chain is better than whose, and kind of like it's hard to let yourself allow a different chain to succeed if you're so invested in one other one. And it's like, what are we really after? Is it money or growth in technology as an ecosystem?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to like the crypto pet peeve and the grifters, right? It's kind of like the L1 wars and kind of the Bitcoin maxi wars. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard because some of it can get technical to understand how each ecosystem works. So obviously, there's folks that understand uh, how a different system works, and I think it's important to call different I don't know issues out from other chains, but as long as it's a correct statement. But what I don't like about the grifting, right, is when someone just uh, sends out a narrative without really understanding the mechanics behind it. Um, but yeah, it can be difficult even as a user to understand kind of like what's true, what's not, and is this really an important issue? Is this chain just a copy of another chain? So that's a difficult thing for the average person.
Absolutely. And when I try to investigate myself, I'm like, oh, they make a good point. Oh, the other side makes a pretty good point too. Oh, but they make a good point against that too. And I'm just like back and forth. They're both making good points. I'm like, shoot, how do I like, without having to read the entire white paper and going through their GitHub and learning all that, how do I make a judgment call?
Yeah, and that's because you do want to make your own judgment call, also, right? Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
just say like, oh, I believe this just because so and so said this. But yeah, that's the tough part, and I think that's why we have kind of layer one crypto wars,
Yeah.
crypto Twitter wars.
It's definitely I think it's becoming more of a gut feeling for me after so many years of seeing this war. It's just like this is, I don't know what, but it's something about my gut and intuition. It's like I've seen something like this before, and I don't know if this is going to work out. But if you're
And
new, it's hard to tell for sure.
and there's also like, as a, I don't know, creator in the space, or as essentially as someone in the space, if you build influence, you kind of have to decide, like, it's hard to be unbiased, and kind of to have an unbiased opinion across the ecosystem. So you do see individuals that stick with one chain just because
Mm-hmm.
that's where their expertise is. So that's kind of like a decision you have to make as an individual. So previously, I was kind of open to all chains and covering all news from all different ecosystems, but now I do have that Ethereum bias where um, everything that I release is with the aspect that it's related to Ethereum, that it holds decentralization values, Web3 ethos. So it's kind of, if you're a creator or in the space, you kind of do have to make that decision of, are you going to try to become unbiased, which is kind of impossible, or are you going
Mm-hmm.
to just say what you think about each chain, or about what ecosystem you're in?
Yep. Now with all this, chain wars talk, what, after being in the industry for so long, what is a favorite wholesome crypto moment that you've had? Something in the ecosystem and industry that made you feel good, that made you feel proud to be part of it, or kind of was like, all right, this is has hope.
Sure. So the Ethereum merge in September, I think that was pretty wholesome. On Twitter, there was like a photo of core developers like in a room, and they were like just like sitting on the floor
Mm-hmm.
with their laptops, while the biggest blockchain upgrade to ever happen, as far as I know. I wasn't here for the early Bitcoin days, um, so that was like pretty humbling to see, and how it all just happened so seamlessly. Because that was an upgrade that was like 7 years in the making, and so that was a wholesome crypto moment.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was. Like people were throwing merge parties. Everyone was getting together, excited for it. It was definitely exciting, and again, and that's one thing I love about the Ethereum community is how strong they are, how tight they are. It's fun to be in. Uh, but yeah, I mean, thank you for contributing to Ethereum's network and ecosystem. Thank you for publishing daily. Like what are people? What should we look forward to for EthDaily? Anything in the roadmap, and also where can everyone find you and sign up?
Sure. So for ETH Daily right now, it's Monday through Friday daily briefing. So I expect to see that continue, just for daily updates about Ethereum ecosystem and projects. If you're looking to listen to ETH Daily, just go to any wherever you listen to podcasts and search for ETH Daily. It's a yellow background with the logo of Ethereum, with kind of like a radio wave coming out of it. And yeah, that's it. If you have any questions in regards to anything podcasting, anything Ethereum, feel free to DM us on Twitter at ETH Daily, and I'll be happy to help you guys out. And yeah, and thank you, Rudy, for having me on the show. I've loved listening to your previous episodes, and kind of enjoy that you're covering that social layer of crypto, and documenting who's been uh, in the scene.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, Mota. Again, thank you again, and I'm excited to keep following ETH Daily.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right.